based on the recent report, nearly 1,400 followers of Nigeria's notorious Boko Haram jihadist group have been intercepted fleeing into Niger following clashes with a rival Islamic State group, according to the army. But meanwhile, Niger's armed forces have so far picked up, get this, more than 1,000 people, many of them women and children, according to the statement from the Army Southern East region. Now, it has been so long since we got into the discussion regarding the jihadist groups among the countries in Africa. What about the country of Niger? How should we understand the political state? And does it seem like a coincidence that those things are happening at the same time? And also, what about the neighboring countries called Mali? And what is the political state in that country as well when we talk about fight against the terrorism, or what we called a terrorist influence? Well, today, are we still living in this peaceful region, or still living in this peaceful state? And how much can we rely on military effort in order to minimize the threat from the jihadist groups? Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, if you follow our show, you should be familiar with our distinguished speaker, which is Scott Morgan. Scott Morgan has been the president of Red Eagle Enterprises since its inception in November 2012. He uses his experiences from serving in the U.S. military to address various projects, and he's currently based in Washington, D.C. Of course, he specializes in the U.S. policy towards Africa, focusing on security and the religious liberty, etc. Well, Scott, and welcome back to The Missing Piece.
Thank you, my friend. It's a pleasure to be back.
Well, brother, I want to get started. Again, as we mentioned before, it almost seemed like a coincidence that nearly 1,400 followers of Nigeria's notorious Boko Haram jihadist groups have been intercepted fleeing into Niger following the clashes with a rival Islamic State group. Now, help us to understand with the first question. You're the expert. How would you describe Niger today when we talk about the political state? And also, how about the correlation or the relationship with the current jihadist group between Niger and Mali? What do you say to that?
First of all, we'll start off by breaking it down a little bit with Nigeria. As you know, Boko Haram got its start, in the northeastern part of Nigeria, Borno State. And they have been gradually spreading their influence not only to the south, but also to the west. But like several other militant groups, the group has divided into two factions. One faction was loyal to the Al-Qaeda and to the teaching, to the revolution proclaimed by bin Laden. And but another faction would actually proclaim loyalty to the Islamic State with al-Baghdadi, which we have, the Islamic State West African province. And they have been fighting for control over the militancy in Nigeria. That insurgency has been going on for over a decade. And as we talk about Boko Haram, today is the birthday of Leah Sharabu. As we're recording this, she was kidnapped by militants believed to be Boko Haram several years ago. Today is her birthday as well. And, there have been advocacy groups highlighting this case. So that is a microcosm, a part of the conversation we're having today, which in some cases involves women and education. But as we go, now let's switch to Niger. Believe it or not, compared to its neighbors, Nigeria, Mali, Burkina, generally it has been stable. We know the militant groups transit across the borders. We know in these countries, the borders are poorly defined. We know that the militant groups have been using the trade routes that go back to the days of the Songhai and Mali empires, which why CT analysts in the West don't pay attention to boggles. Going back to my point, what has Niger done differently so that the militant movements have not been able to gain a foothold, despite the fact that Boko Haram in the past has launched attacks in Niger. They've also launched attacks in Chad. Why haven't they been able to get a foothold in Niger, despite the porous borders? An insurgency only thrives due to governance or lack thereof. The current leadership in Niger has done several things. They've gone out of their way to improve education and improve maternal health care. So that way you don't have teenage mothers replicating the cycle that we see, which inadvertently places greater strain on the resources of the country, particularly when it comes to healthcare, education, things moving on down the road, which during any times of stress can be exploited by militant groups to actually recruit fighters and things like that. The Niger government, with the assistance of the West, not just military assistance, but also training doctors, nurses, and what have you, has sought to address it through that way, which has been completely different than what Mali has tried to do and failed, with the French doing exclusively just going and doing a counterinsurgency program, which Barkhane failed miserably. Militants have actually spread their focus into Burkina Faso, which, we actually just received reports late last night here as we're recording. 33 more people were actually killed in Western Burkina Faso. So actually, Niger has also been in a target for several reasons. The French, when they withdrew their forces from Operation Barkhane and their support mission from Burkina Faso, most people assumed that they would be withdrawn into Chad. They were not. They were actually redeployed into Niger. France is not the only country that has a military mission in Niger. The EU and Germany also have a mission there, as well does the United States. The United States rotates special forces out of the country and maintains a base for UAVs that is north of the capital, Niamey, where it conducts reconnaissance operations, which actually, ironically enough, we're supporting the French effort in Mali and Burkina Faso. So what the future, and there's some upcoming changes here in the U.S., notably the Congress withdrew the 2001 AUMF authorized use of military force and drawing up a new one. So basically, there are some people that still want to see that authorization have more Middle East focus, supporting our allies, in Kurdistan and Northeast Syria. But also the AUMF should also address the Sahel as well, and even Somalia. So that's going to be an interesting debate to watch here in Washington. So as with most other crisis spots in the Sahel, lots of moving parts and playing out in various locations, guys. We're not just talking about, the deserts and the oases of the Sahel. We're also talking Berlin, Paris, Brussels, Washington, as well as Abuja and the other regional cities. So sometimes it's like peeling back the layer of an onion, my friend. You actually have to peel back this to see what is actually going on.
That's right, Scott. Again, before we bring U.S. into our conversation, according to the UN figure that Boko Haram launched a bloody campaign in northern eastern Nigeria back in 2009 that has left over 40 100,000 dead and displaced around 2 million from their homes. Again, today, as we mentioned in the intro, on one hand, there's no denying that Boko Haram created this horrendous, or even we'll say this painful image for the world. But on the other hand, we still see that those followers of Boko Haram are trying to reach multiple regions, and the island long have been a butthole for jihadists. So again, Scott, help us with better understanding. How should we assess the presence of Boko Haram, even though we have not heard from them for a while, or we have not seen any reports? Does that mean that today we should overlook their presence, or we should minimize, or I mean not minimize, I'm sorry, we should completely overlook or ignore their presence? And what do you say to that?
If we want to talk about the conflict in Nigeria specifically, it's not the best way to describe it. It's almost like a shiny new toy. Boko Haram's been around since 2009, as you focus. They're still active. They're still launching raids. People also forget that the group is not just active in Niger and Chad, but they've also gone and they're also creating issues in northern Cameroon as well. That doesn't generally make it into the 24-hour info news cycle that we are fed. When it comes to what's going on within Nigeria itself, they're still active. They're still a threat, but they've and more often than not, including some of those who are advocates here in Washington, the focus has been shifted to another group. As a perpetrator of violence in Nigeria, that being the Fulani, which is a nomadic group of Muslims that range literally from Senegal to Sudan. And, they're a nomadic tribe, agrarian in nature. Are they being deliberately overlooked? Probably not. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom released a report about how the Fulani themselves have been attacked, suffering violence in central Nigeria as well. And it was actually done in such a way that it could be seen as that Nigeria's Christian community were the ones perpetrating the violence against them. And several advocacy groups actually pushed back against it. So will USCIRF actually amend their report? We don't know, but it got pushed back. But the report also indicated, and I documented, the Fulani also have been targets of violence inside Mali itself. And and this has actually been done by government actors, including the Russian professional Caucasians, for lack of a better term. And so it's with almost everything in West Africa. There's always an underlying layer that also brings up to another point. So often, we always see and hear reports in the Nigerian media that reaches the international news outlets like us that the Nigerian army raided a base, killed X amount of Boko Haram fighters. But the group has remained resilient. And as I stated earlier, an insurgency can thrive and move forward due to governance issues. Is the government heavy-handed in responding to an issue, or are they not doing enough? Because most people forget, most people forget that for several years, the Nigerian government, this is specifically under the rule of Goodluck Jonathan, ceded all authority in Borno State So basically, except for the military had all oversight over what's going on in Borno State. Aside from that, there was virtually no Nigerian federal government presence.
Mm.
And now, as the violence has actually spread into the Middle Belt, what we consider the Middle Belt states, where the dividing line between the Muslims and the Christian communities in Nigeria reside. And that's where the conflict, and that's where all the focus on the counterinsurgency and counterterrorism analysts are in Nigeria. But as you know, in Niger and even Mali, there were reports that going back as far as 2012 when the Mali government collapsed after a coup and insurgent attacks. There were reports that Boko Haram fighters went into Mali and were training with the Tuareg and the Islamic militants there. And there were reports in the media, but you did not see any of the intelligence services. CIA, MI6, Mossad, DGSA in France. You never saw any intelligence agencies do any follow up regarding that. That's one that falls under what we here in the U.S. call the woulda, coulda, shoulda. Why didn't they do it? Did they not take it as a threat? Because a decade later, you see militants raging, not just Nigeria and Cameroon, and all the way over into Mali and Burkina, threatening Cote d'Ivoire. I mean, the situation in the Sahel is now so bad, is that the Biden administration is actually preparing a program to assist Benin's military, and the Rwandans are already there. So what? Now the question is, what will the Sahel look like the Middle East post in a post-Saddam 2003 Middle East scenario?
That's a great question, Scott. Again, my next question want to focus on women and children. Again, as we mentioned before, the Niger's arms forces so far and picked up more than 1,000 people, many of them women or children. Now, when we talk about the influence of jihadist group, like Boko Haram, why women and children are generally the most vulnerable ones? So in other words, what can the nation do, or what can the world do to ensure the safety of women and children in order to avoid major disaster? So in other words, we don't want women and children to be the victims or fallen into the jihadist groups. So number one, why are they always vulnerable? And number two, what are the ways for us to prevent such disaster happening over and over again?
In some of those societies, women are the ones that tend the farms and conduct the agriculture. They go out and do water. And children are vulnerable pretty much when their schools closed. The schools closed down. Which is why you see Niger inviting NGOs that deal with maternal health care and education. They're invited into Niger to buttress their efforts to keep women and children being exploited by the militants. And from what we see, there is some success there. And as you know, and another thing is, although the other side is we don't know how they actually have any oversight over some of the madrasas where some of the fighters are actually doing it, because people forget, although they claim to be militants, more often than not, there's another factor at home, because they actually discovered in northern Mali, they were actually interviewed some people, teenage men, and they asked, why did they join the militant movement? And pretty much The answer was is they provided a livelihood. They got income or whatever, so they can maintain and help keep their families and fed, and a roof over their head, things like that. It was not some of these conflicts, have a religious tone in them, are not exclusively religious. It's basically if you provide me the means to take care of my family, I will go with you. It's somewhat simple but accurate.
Scott, I want to wrap up our conversation by asking you the last question, which is, we know today Niger, one of the poorest countries in the world, is also facing a jihadist insurgency. Again, this is something that you mentioned over and over again, of course, on the southwestern border with Mali. Now, again, going back to what you shared with us, how much do you think that economic stability and also political stability can actually prevent the country from falling into the jihadist influence or impact? Because we know that on one hand, this is a slow process, especially for the country, not just for Niger, but for many countries in Africa. But on the other hand, if we allow the jihadist groups such as Boko Haram continue to grow and continue to multiply, at the end of the day, this group is not just targeting for one country. It's not just targeting for one region. It's actually eventually it could spread into much greater areas as well. So again, Scott, what can we do to ensure the political stability and also this economic stability in the country of Niger, and so that we are basically cut the foothold of the jihadist insurgency within the country?
Well, basically, the quick and easy way is this is not will be a military solution, total military solution. We can arm and train and equip the Nigerian military to support themselves, That's a given. But supporting efforts for education, maternal health care, because on average, I think it was a UN study a couple years ago that stated by the time a mother in Niger turns 21, she's already had 3 children. Working on programs to do that, so to actually, maintain your educations and better family planning. Not talking abortion, because some people in the West interchange those two terms, abortion and family planning. But
that's right.
Those supporting those programs with training and cash has made an impact in Niger, which has made it resilient. Although Niger has a goal, because there's also another reason why they're also interested in Niger is, there's also, besides the Western military presence, there's also countries mining for uranium. As you know, besides what happened with the Yellow Cake in 2003, which led to the U.S. invasion of Iraq, and as you know, also within recent, on literally the same day that a French mining company evacuated their employees into Niamey due to a security threat. And that threat was announced the same day that the Nigerian government announced, we just rounded up 1,400 members of Boko Haram. That's good, but we don't know about other groups like JNIM that are causing havoc in Mali and Burkina. They haven't stated how much of a presence they have. So, multifaceted problem with multifaceted solutions. Can't be done with how sometimes the Western countries deal with an issue, which is akin to using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. We can't. Sometimes our heavy-handed response will not resolve the issue, but lead to further issues down the road. And that's a thought process that people have also overlooked as well.
Well, again, Scott, 100% agree with you, because I think today, when we are talking about the solutions and the strategies in terms of dealing with the jihadist groups such as Boko Haram, and also to provide economic and social stability to countries, again, among the within the African continent, it's crucial. It's not just a one nation's call. It's not one nation's effort. It's the collective effort. It's the collective contribution or dedication to maintain the stability and also the order of the world. Well, again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm speaking to Scott Morgan. Again, Scott has been the president of Red Eagle Enterprises since its inception in November 2012. He uses his experiences from serving the U.S. military to address various projects related to many countries around the world. Again, Scott, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you so much, brother, for your contribution and also your insightful analysis. Help us on the show. Again, we love to have you for future episodes. And again, until then, be blessed, brother.